Welcome back to Indianomics. We are discussing the independence of the Reserve Bank under the new monetary policy framework with two former governors, Jalar and Rangarajan, journalist K.K. Bhattacharya, and the JP Morgan economist Sajid Chinoy. Well, Dr. Rangarajan, to you first. The committee, how should it best be constituted so that it can preserve the independence of the Reserve Bank as well get rival points of view in?
Before that, I would like to make one comment on your previous question.
Yes,
on the autonomy of the Reserve Bank and
yes,
the autonomy and the responsibilities of the central government. In some sense, price stability becomes a greater responsibility of the central bank, and therefore it has to pursue that particular objective. And they have to work in unison. But if the central government, in my view, doesn't do things in a way in which it is conducive to price stability, the government, the Reserve Bank of India must come out, and the opportunity is given in the agreement that it has to issue a statement, or it has to make public the reasons why the inflation is running at above the stipulated level. And then if they felt that the government of India is responsible for it, they should come out and clearly state that and let the public understand it. Now, to come back to your question on the technical committee, I do believe that there must be representatives of the government, representatives of the Reserve Bank, and some independent people in it. I had, in fact, suggested earlier that even a subcommittee of the board of the Reserve Bank would be adequate. In fact, the Board for Financial Supervision was set up that way during my time, and it has continued that way. In fact, in the board, there are representatives of the government. Of course, there are representatives of the Reserve Bank. There are independent people. That would have been a much easier thing, and it would reconcile with the responsibility of the board also. But now that they have decided to set up an independent committee, I would say that let's have representatives of the government, the Reserve Bank, and some independent directors. And in the appointment of these members, both the government and the Reserve Bank should be involved.
Okay. Dr. Jalar, any ideas?
No idea. I mean, Monetary Policy Committee is there.
Okay.
I mean, there is no ideas. The only thing is that if there is a conflict of interest within the Monetary Policy Committee, then how do you resolve it?
Okay.
So
should the governor have a veto power then?
No, veto is not the right word. You know, I mean, I think you can have a process whereby it is a consultative process. You know, I mean, when you in the media are meeting with your editors and others, there is a consultative process that, yes, this is what we are going to give priority to. So there can be a consultative process within the Monetary Policy Committee, but somebody must have the authority ultimately to take a decision this way or that way. So it's not a veto. You see what I mean?
Yes.
I mean that if you are an authority,
yeah,
either fiscal authority or a government authority, and if you want to, supposing there is a drought, and you want to create money, that is fiscal department, then it has to do it. I mean, and you have to spend, and you have to rescue the poor, and so on and so forth. So you see what I mean? I mean, you can't decide by a veto.
Okay.
That the committee will decide, and I will have a veto.
I take your point. So that somebody has the responsibility to take the final call, and that in this case is the government.
And these are consultative committees,
okay,
and these should be consultative committees and not committees which make decisions based on voting, like Parliament or cabinet doesn't make decisions based on voting.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Ultimately, it's the collective responsibility of the cabinet to Parliament.
Yes, sir. Sajid, how do you think the committee is normally constituted in other countries?
I was going to say, so let's look at global practices, best practices. There are a few kind of rules of thumb straight off. This is not a part-time job. In most very serious central banks, these are full-time members who have a term length of 3 years, sometimes even more. So this is not, making monetary policy on nights and weekends. It's a full-time job where you have access to all the data of the RBI and you study it closely. Second, of course, there should be no perceived apparent conflict of interest, so that stigma cannot exist. And you want people who really understand understand monetary policy, which limits the universe of people you can pick. So these are just quite standard frameworks. I guess the other issue is very few countries, I think, have direct members of the government or government appointees on the Monetary Policy Committee, because that kind of undermines the autonomy, the independence of the central bank. And ultimately, you want a system, either by the composition of the committee or through some kind of veto, where, final power does rest with the central bank. In the Urjit Patel report, we had said a 5-member committee, of which 3 are from the RBI, because if they are going to be responsible for delivering on this target, they must also have operational autonomy. On the one hand, you can't say, here's a target to which you're responsible, but we're tying your hands because you can be outvoted on an MPC. So I think those are some general practices and principles that most central banks around the world have found quite successful.
Okay. Well, out of time, AKB, your last word.
Yeah. Well, if you want the Monetary Policy Committee to be independent, I don't know how having a government nominee on this committee will actually help, and in my view it will actually complicate matters. If you have a monetary policy framework in place where the targets are given, the responsibilities are outlined, then I think it is ideal to have a monetary policy committee which is headed by the governor, and the framework targets are given to him. And if you have the government nominees there, I think there will be not only a conflict of interest. If you want the committee to take unbiased views on what needs to be done rightly and correctly, I think that goal may get compromised. So it's better to have the RBI nominees and also have some knowledgeable experts on this, but government nominees, I would be extremely uncomfortable with.
Right. Well, I would agree with that, AKB. While I take Dr. Jalan's point that it has to be consultative, clearly if there happen to be members who are government yes-men and cut rates when the RBI doesn't want it, this framework can be pretty infructuous. But we have to learn as we go along. Thank you very much, Dr. Rangarajan, Dr. Jalan, AKB and Sajid for this discussion. That's it on Internomics.